I want to tell you something I don't say often. There are days when I sit down to play a game I genuinely love, and I can't fully enter it. The world is right there. The controller is in my hands, but something inside me won't switch off. A worry, a calculation, a loop of thoughts I can't seem to interrupt. Some quiet, gnawing version of anxiety that turns what should be joy into noise. And here's what hit me hardest about that. I wasn't just struggling to enjoy games. I was struggling to enjoy my own life. My mind, the one thing I carry into everything, had become my greatest obstacle. Not the world, not circumstances. My own internal chatter was robbing me of the very peace I was working so hard to build. And then I started paying closer attention to the warriors I was playing. Not their weapons, not their stats or their abilities, their stillness. Geralt of Rivia doesn't charge blindly into a monster. He stops, studies, reads the situation. He controls the storm inside before he steps into the one outside. Jin Sakai meditates on cliff tops above burning villages, not because he has time to spare, but because without that stillness, his blade is just steel. Isaac Clarke, deep in the horrors of the Ishimura, survives not because he's the strongest man on the ship, but because when panic floods in, something in him goes quiet. He focuses, he breathes, he comes back to what's real. These are warriors from completely different worlds, but they share something most people overlook. The outer battle is never the hardest one. I was losing the inner one, and I hadn't even noticed. That's why I started meditating. Let me be honest with you. I'm a high anxiety person. My mind is fast, active, and left unchecked, relentless. It obsesses, almost always see the negative. It circles back to the same worries, like a broken crest loop. It can't escape. Financial fear, scarcity thinking, the obsessive need for certainty in a world that doesn't offer any. For a long time, I thought that was just who I was. That some people were calm and some weren't, and I fell into the wrong category. But then I realized something uncomfortable. The version of me running on that anxiety, the reactive, restless, never quite present version, wasn't my true self. It was a character I had been playing for so long. I'd forgotten I was the one holding the controller. And the great warriors we kept returning to in games, they understood something ancient that modern life has almost completely buried. Tranquility is not weakness. It is the foundation of every strength that follows. We are surrounded by distraction on a scale no generation before us has ever faced. Notifications, outrage, urgency, fear, war. The average attention span has now collapsed to under 3 minutes, and most people, myself included for a long time, have been quietly conditioned to run from stillness. Because when it gets quiet, the thoughts we've been avoiding get very loud. So we fill the silence constantly. Another scroll, another episode, another hour of gaming to numb what we haven't faced. And I say that without judgment because I did it too. But here's what I eventually understood. Avoidance doesn't dissolve anxiety, it feeds it. Every thought you refuse to sit with grows heavier. Every silence you fill with noise instead of presence costs you something you don't get back. There's a quote I come back to often. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Because tranquility, genuine, earned inner stillness, has become the rarest luxury of our age. Meditation, breathing, stillness. It sounds like something for monks, wellness retreats, and people with too much time. It's not. Here's what it actually is, stripped of all the noise. You sit somewhere quiet, you close your eyes, you breathe deliberately, consciously, in and out. And when thoughts arrive, because they absolutely will, you don't fight them, you don't force them out, you simply notice them and you let them pass. Like a warrior watching enemies approach from a ridge, aware, still, not drawn into battle unless he chooses to be. There's a phrase I keep returning to. Enlightenment is the space between thoughts, not the absence of thoughts, just the space between them. That single idea changed how I understand this practice. because it means you don't need to silence your mind completely. You don't need years of discipline before it helps. Every genuine moment of stillness, even just a few quiet seconds, that is the practice. You are not the thoughts in your head. There is something deeper underneath them, something that already knows your truth. Meditation teaches you to hear it. Think about how Geralt prepares before a boss fight. He doesn't rush in blind. He brews his potions. He clears his mind. Preparation, intention, presence. That ritual before the battle, that is meditation. And when he's in the fight, truly in it, there is no yesterday, no tomorrow, just this moment, this enemy, this choice. That's what stillness trains you for. Because here's what I've learned about the past. Living in it is exhausting in a way most people don't even register. Because it's become their normal. Dragging yesterday's regrets and resentments into today is that weight. It colors every room you walk into. It poisons every present moment before you've even had a chance to experience it. And here's the brutal truth. It changes nothing. The past is already over. The future hasn't arrived. The only moment where you actually have any power is right now. Tommy Angelo in Mafia carries his past like a stone around his neck his entire life. Every compromise, every line he crossed, it follows him. Not because the world won't let him go, because he won't let it go. Nico Bellic arrives in Liberty City, desperate for a new beginning.
America is an opportunity for a new beginning. You're in need of one.
There's no such thing as a new beginning, Roman. With every day we live, we pick up new baggage. Baggage that we must carry with us for the rest of our lives. There's no dropping it and pretending we are fresh and clean just because we get off a boat in a new place.
Stop being so dramatic, Nico. Time is a healer. We live and we forget the past.
He can't release it, so he keeps living the same story in a different city. The warriors who thrive are the ones who learn to do what few people actually can. Put down what no longer serves them. Step into this moment and begin again. That's not weakness. That's the hardest discipline there is. 10 to 20 minutes, that's all. I sit quietly. No phone, no notifications. I close my eyes, focus on my breath, and I let the session do two things. First, awareness. I become conscious of my breathing, the sensation of my body, the space I'm actually in right now. I try to find the gap between thoughts and stay in it for just a moment longer each time I practice. Not forcing, not fighting, just expanding that space breath by breath. Second, reflection. I think about who I want to be in the hours ahead. What values matter to me today? What needs to happen for this to be a day I'm genuinely proud of when I look back at it? And I'll be honest, it's not peaceful at first. When you first sit still, the mind gets louder. All the anxiety surfaces. Restless thoughts demand attention. The old version of you, the reactive, anxious, autopilot version, doesn't go quietly. That resistance, that discomfort, that's not failure. That's the rewiring process. The old self doesn't want to die. It screams, it comes back. The practice is simply this. Acknowledge it and release it again and again and again until the new version of you becomes the one who shows up by default. The greatest characters in gaming aren't defined by their weapons, their power, or their stats. They are defined by who they are when the world is at its most relentless, by the stillness they carry inside the storm. And the best version of you, the one you are building toward, won't be defined by what you achieve. It will be defined by how present you are for the life you are actually living. Meditation is not a retreat from the world. It's the training ground for it. It's how you sharpen the one weapon that underlies everything else. A quiet mind. 10 minutes a day, one breath at a time, one thought released at a time. That's how the inner warrior is built. Not in the battles you win out there, but in the silence you learn to hold in here. Stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next video.